Again, my name is Greg Greiwe. I am the implementation consultant that will be servicing your account throughout the customer lifecycle and look forward to working with you. I've had several conversations with Diane to date and just thoroughly appreciate the feedback that she's given me so far to help position my conversation throughout this afternoon's admin training webinar. Before I go into my background, Elizabeth, you can introduce yourself as well as Scott, your titles, and one expectation of today's webinar.
Yeah, my name is Elizabeth Hughes. I'm the Chief Probation Officer here with Juvenile Court. I've been with the court for almost 15 years now, and I really have seen a change in education throughout the years, and online is a huge part of what the youth we're working with are doing at this point in time, especially Odysseyware. So in helping support the youth we work with, we're really excited to get this information on what they're doing, and also to help with some of the programs that we have set up for the kids. So we're looking forward to getting this this information, so this training.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Scott?
That's a tough act to follow. That's a good speech. Yeah, my name is Scott Oxier. I am the diversion coordinator here at court. A lot of my caseload in diversion and through the court process is truancy. So we work with the ESC over here in trying to develop either programming or things with the school to basically try to get the kids back in school. So like Liz said, Odysseyware is huge, especially in our bigger school districts in Miami County. A lot of our clients, a lot of our students we work with are in some sort of credit recovery program. So I think the basic thing that I'm trying to get from this is just a better understanding about how the program works and the ins and outs, and whether or not it's something that we can possibly monitor better for the students that we work with.
Very good. Thank you for your feedback. Again, my name is Greg Greiwe, implementation consultant with Odysseyware. Been with the company for a couple years now. I reside out of Cincinnati, Ohio, just directly down Interstate 75, not too far from Troy, Ohio. I've been in the educational arena for about 37 years, 10 of which as a high school math teacher and district administrator of technology. And the last 27 years of my career has been the educational software arena. So I do hope that my 37 years in the field of education will contribute constructive conversation during our discussion, and certainly address those immediate needs and how you want to implement Odysseyware with your clients. So I look forward to this conversation, as well as working with your probation officers next Thursday when we do our on-site PD session. Feel free to ask questions at any time, Elizabeth and Scott, either through the chat room that you see on the right-hand side, or just stop me and say, Greg, slow down, give me an idea about what you just explained, and I'll be glad to stop and make sure that when we all walk away from today's admin training webinar, you have a good sense of how to not only position this program so it serves as a great segue until next Thursday's on-site PD session, but you really understand the functionality and the features that are contained within the Odysseyware admin program. So we look forward to going through that over the next hour and a half to 2 hours. Any questions before we begin?
No.
Nope.
All right. The learning outcomes for today, as listed on this slide. Understand the power and the instructional design of Odysseyware. Number 2, understand the default settings and permission rights. That's really your primary responsibility as an admin, to make sure those settings and permission rights by which we discussed today are agreed upon, and again sets the stage for next week's training. Number 3, understand how user profiles and enrollments are created. Number 4, understand how to batch enroll students. Even though you're going to be dealing with a small population, we'll show you how to either manually enroll students or batch enroll, depending upon what your preference is. And then finally, understand the features in each menu tab listed on the admin navigation bar. What we don't cover today certainly will be reviewed with your probation officers next Thursday. So this is not really about training you on the product as much as the admin features and functionalities. Your Odysseyware team. This represents beyond myself and Joe Douglas, those that will be supporting your implementation throughout the year. I report directly to Lauren Carr, who's the Client Service Manager out of Atlanta, Georgia. And then Dan assists Joe in regards to renewals of contracts and also quotes, but Joe will be your primary contact from the sales side of the fence.
Okay. Hey, Greg, are we going to get a copy of this PowerPoint as well, or should we be copying all of these email addresses down?
You'll get a copy as soon as this admin training room is completed this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other document I'll reference during the training, I'll also send you an electronic copy of those documents.
Great, thanks.
You're quite welcome. Key guiding questions, and some of these were already answered by Diane this morning when I talked to her. First one, what was your primary purpose of purchasing Odysseyware? Say that 5 times fast. So Elizabeth, I will refer to you. What was your primary purpose for purchasing our products?
We have a day treatment program where we send kids to work on Odysseyware who have had some issues in their traditional homeschool. And basically they're working on the Odysseyware, and we sometimes supervise them in our own building. And it's like Scott had said, we kind of want to know what they're doing and making sure that if they need help, we're able to help them and just get more of an understanding of what Odysseyware is, since a lot of our kids, whether it be in a detached facility or a day treatment program, this is the primary educational tool that they're using. And now since the court does have that program, we sort of have a buy-in with it that we need this information as well. Excellent.
Very good. And what program area? We know that credit recovery is your primary focus for this particular school year. Any other things outside of credit recovery, like RTI or special needs students, anything that you deem would be appropriate?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Yeah, that's what Diane mentioned this morning. That's why I put it in parentheses to make sure that we do position and strategically position ourselves in this conversation today around how to best fit this population around credit recovery. So we will do that. How many probation officers will be integrating the courses and tools next week and beyond?
8.
3?
8.
8, okay, very good. And I'll ask Diane for that list of those officers so I can actually enroll their names prior to the on-site PD session. That will help expedite the process of getting them access to the program at the beginning of the session.
I can actually email you those today.
Oh, perfect. Very good. And all I need is just first name and last name and what your preference is in regards to how their login credentials will be created. Whatever the username, password. Actually, don't give me the password. I'll just type in a temporary password, 123456. And when they log in, they'll change it upon their logging in.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. And how many clients are expected to access Odysseyware courses this year?
Good question.
Tough one.
Approximately.
That's what I was thinking, 10 to 15.
Yeah, 10 to 15.
Okay. And since you have a 6 concurrent license, which means you can enroll as many students on the system as you want, only 6 at one time will be able to access or log into Odysseyware. So multiple enrollments, but the 6 concurrent license gives you the opportunity to access 6 enrollments at one time. And when one logs out, the other one can log in.
Okay.
So that's good. And then subject area courses, are you planning to focus on or enroll your students in or clients in this year?
I think mainly it would be the general classes, English, math, science, history. I think day treatment does some like elective type courses, but that would be my guess.
Okay, Elizabeth?
Yeah, same. The core classes, or if they were already taking a class that they failed in that maybe wasn't elective, that. And I don't know if, Odysseyware, if our area has a list of already classes that they use as far as the school districts in our area, that, those would be the same classes we would be looking at, nothing additional.
Okay. Okay. So beyond the 4 core courses areas that you have CTE courses, you've got business courses, health courses, a great array of diagnostic and assessment tools that we'll talk about. So altogether, you have 245 prepackaged courses that are in your Odysseyware library, which is good news.
A lot, yeah.
Lots to choose from.
Great.
All right. So as we looked at program solutions, I've already addressed this question, in which you've answered that credit recovery will be your primary focus, so therefore no need to address these other program areas by which Odysseyware has been very successful in regards to its implementation. So I will bypass that slide and get right into an overview of Odysseyware. The exciting thing about Odysseyware is that it can be accessed 24/7 on any tablet, laptop, desktop, whatever device they're using. Odysseyware can be accessed through that single URL that has been set up for your account, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. In your type of instruction, explain to me either Scott or Elizabeth, how are the probation officers acting as their instructors working with these clients? Is it one-on-one, small group, whole group? What is the dynamics?
Probably small group or one-on-one.
Okay.
Now, like the distinction between small group and a whole group, I can't imagine it being, more than 6, 7 kids at one time.
Well, I think we're only getting 6 computers.
Yeah,
so it would be a max of 6 at a time. So it'd be small group or one-on-one.
Okay, and location of where they'll be centered primarily?
In our Piqua office.
Piqua office, okay, very good. And will they have access, or you're giving them permission to access Odysseyware outside of that brick and mortar?
Yes, we'll have that at our Piqua office, and then also possibly at our day treatment setting. And then if we have one that needs to be at home or in our Troy office, we would allow that as well.
Okay, so something to keep in mind when we set up your campus IDs to identify each of those facilities by which a student will either be assigned to or will spend most of his time spent in that brick and mortar facility by which they'll be accessing the program.
Okay, and we do that through individual student then, or we do that as a whole of saying this is where it could be in the beginning?
Well, the good news is that you've got the flexibility in using any type of instructional approach using Odysseyware, whether it be one-on-one, through whole group, small group, lecture approach, and even as we see now more and more in our classrooms, blended learning models and approaches by which they integrate these courses. Any questions about the accessibility or features around Odysseyware based on this one slide?
So if a student uses or logs on to Odysseyware in a location that we do not predetermine or designate, is that an issue? Like, you see what I'm asking?
Yeah.
If they go to a different location other than what we designate as an approved location?
Well, the data will always follow them, but at the time that we enroll the students, either through batch enrollment or manual grading, we want to make sure we associate that student with a campus ID. So from a reporting standpoint, you can disaggregate the data by campus ID, which allows you to isolate data from other students that don't basically attend that particular building.
So that would avoid them going to a buddy's house and doing the homework over there.
Yeah.
No, they would still be able to access it, but if we were running reports on it, they would not be in that report. They access from a different place.
Yeah, they can actually access any 24/7 from any location, even though their campus ID will be identified by which the brick and mortar they will be doing most of their work, but they can access the program anywhere. But the nice thing about what we'll talk about this afternoon is that you can set the default settings by which you can avoid that student having access to the programs while they're at home.
Okay, all right.
So you can control that environment along with the assessment environment by which if you do not want them to take any type of quiz or test away from a proctored environment, you can do that through this system.
Okay. So we can, if they were to do homework at home, we can set the defaults like it's okay for you to do homework or book work per se, but then tests had to be monitored.
Yeah, if you choose to do so. Otherwise, you can let them go and freely go through any type of unit without having any type of restrictions.
Okay.
Yeah. And that could be done at the global level and a student by student level.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Very good. As we look at the hierarchy of individualization, which is really the focus of what you're doing through credit recovery, the core curriculum of Odysseyware is really based on the 245 prepackaged courses that are in your library, which contains not only the four core subject areas, but electives, instructional tools. In fact, what I'll do right now, I'll exit from my PowerPoint and bring up one of the documents that we'll be sharing during next week's training. It's called the course guide. And let me make sure this is large enough for you to see it. And this guide will basically list on the front and back side all of the prepackaged courses you now have in your library, but this will indicate by subject area what are the specific Odysseyware course titles. For example, if you look on this first page, you will see at a glance courses listed under English Language Arts, Mathematics, Business Fine Arts, Advanced Placement courses. And as I scroll down, Science and History. You've got a complete blended learning library containing a plethora of instructional videos for blended learning purposes. And as I continue scrolling down to the bottom of the first page, health courses, world languages, which we just recently added Spanish 3. And then on the right-hand side, an assortment of assessment and diagnostic tools. And I do want to point out one of these tools being the Spark assessment. This is an excellent diagnostic tool or remedial tool by which a teacher, or in this case probation officer, can assign to any given student in the area of English language arts and mathematics. The nice thing about this assessment, it doesn't ask like 100 questions to determine where they're placed in the software. It will actually pinpoint specific skills within the grade levels of kindergarten through 8th grade, because there is an assessment for each grade level, that once it pinpoints that specific skill, based on that student's performance on that assessment, which contain 4 questions, if they pass it, they go on to the next series of assessment questions for a particular skill. But if they fail it, based on what your passing threshold is, it's going to actually prescribe a specific lesson for them to work on. So it really builds up foundational skills where otherwise, if they're lacking, that's a good tool to use to build foundational skills in those 2 subject areas. Any questions about that particular assessment, just as a side note?
Is that something that a lot of public schools already use or utilize, that Spark assessment?
Yeah, it really is up to the discretion of the schools. Like in high schools, where we find a lot of students who are performing below 9th grade level, they use Spark assessment to build those foundational skills so that they can now perform better at grade level. Otherwise, they use their own assessments that are either adopted by the state or adopted by the district. But these are some that you could consider using to supplement other assessments that are built within the program.
I guess the reason I'm asking, a lot of the students that we work with on some level, and we're not educators by any stretch, but we're like, oh, so-and-so could probably benefit from being assessed for an IEP, or is the Spark assessment something that we could pull and say, hey, this is something we did, this is something that we'd like you guys to take a look at as part of that evaluation to see if that student could benefit from, further assessment from at the school level. Because a lot of our kids either aren't going to school, there are behavioral issues in school, and they just kind of fall between the cracks. So is that something that we can utilize and say, hey, this is something we ran, can this be further tested?
Absolutely, Scott, because within Spark assessment, you have pre and post testing. So if you decide to use the pre-test at the beginning of the year and the post-test at the end of the year, you can see where the gains are by standard within each of these grade levels.
Okay.
And then you have other tests also. The essentials of mathematics, essentials of language arts are also good diagnostic tools that we can talk about next week, but we'll flush that out, and then based on the feedback we get from the probation officers on which assessment would be appropriate for measuring growth over time, we can make that decision next week.
Okay.
In addition to these courses on page 1, you will also see the list of over 84 career and technical education courses. These courses are listed in these categories based on the 16 career clusters as defined by the Department of Labor. And so if you have any emphasis when working with your clients on career readiness skills, these courses are simply outstanding. They're excellent real-life application type of content skills that prepare them for these different occupations as listed here on the second page. So I'll send to you, Elizabeth and Scott, as well as Diane, a copy of this course guide so you see at a glance all the courses that are in your library.
Okay.
Any questions about that guide?
No.
All right, let's go ahead and exit from that, return to our PowerPoint. Just a few more slides to go before we'll go live under your account. And please verify that you see the screen that says a hierarchy of individualization in the upper right-hand corner.
Yes.
All right. So beyond our core courses, we have what we call prescriptive learning paths. When we get into the point where we show you the different settings and using our assessments, one thing we'll learn about is that contained within all of our courses, except for AP and CTE courses, there's what we call a pre-unit assessment. So let's say a student goes into Algebra 1. The first thing they will do, if in fact we activate what we call the course prescriptive mode at the time that they assign Algebra 1 to a student, or in this case to a client, it will activate this pre-unit assessment, and based on their performance, it will then provide a learning path by which that student will go through only those lessons by which they need work on, and it will bypass that content area by which they did well on the pre-assessment. We'll talk more about that, but just remember that these pre-unit assessments reside in the majority of your Odysseyware courses and really serve as an invaluable tool in a credit recovery environment. The last two things that are on the hierarchy are course customization. May not be our first point of emphasis next Thursday during on-site training, but if there's ever a time down the road that you want to take our prepackaged courses and customize it to further align to your curriculum or pacing guide or state standards, then we can customize a course, or that being a teacher, probation officer can customize a course to his or her liking. It's a very powerful tool, and we find more and more districts, especially in their second, third year of implementation, where they go from assigning prepackaged Odysseyware courses into designing their own custom courses using our content. And then beyond that, you also have the ability to customize your own assignments or projects. So we'll talk about this in a little bit, by which you can actually pull in Web 2.0 tools like YouTube and images and photographs and anything you want to pull from your desktop into your own customized assignment. And once published, you can put into your customized course. So these teacher authoring tools are very powerful, but yet again, in a credit recovery environment, you may not want to focus on that initially, but down the road, do you see some value of course customization, Scott or Elizabeth?
I do, with youth that maybe have completed maybe all of their core classes, or in need of something more, or youth that we feel they need to expand on their learning of a class. I think that could be utilized in that way.
Okay. Scott?
No, not offhand. I mean, I think she covered it.
Okay. And even beyond customizing courses, they can create mini lessons or mini modules by which they're trying to use Odysseyware as a supplement to instruction. But in this case, in credit recovery, your preference and first choice will be just assigning the prepackaged courses, at least for now.
Great.
Yes.
All right. Very good. I'll bypass the instructional design since we're talking about credit recovery. This is more for your traditional classroom, so I will bypass this particular slide for now. And then we'll go to the next slide that talks about this prescriptive learning path. I'm going to be asking you a couple questions based on your observation on the right-hand side in what scenario would result as if a student was given this pre-unit test. So let's say a student does go into Algebra 1. They come across Unit 1 in which they take the pre-unit test, which is illustrated at the top of the slide. If they pass that assessment, let's say at 80% or above is the threshold by which we set today, what happens? Where will that student go if they pass the assessment?
To pretest 2?
That's right. They bypass all of the content, that being lessons and projects and quiz and test in Unit 1, because they passed the pre-unit assessment.
I see. They test out of it, basically.
Exactly right, Scott. But if they fail on the right-hand side, look at that illustration. Tell me what's happening if they score below 80%, if in fact that is the passing threshold.
They have to do every other lesson.
Not necessarily, but good guess.
Would it depend upon how they did on Lesson A?
Yeah.
It's because it says assign, skip, assign, skip, assign. So if they do well in Lesson A, do they go to Lesson C?
Okay, let me explain what that means. If in fact they did score below 80%, it will only assign those lessons in which they did poorly on that pre-unit assessment and skip those lessons which they did well on.
Okay. We should have got that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It was my next guess. I mean, really.
I wasn't even, my mind was just blown. All right.
Oh, I love it. And what that is, it's called flex mode, and we'll talk more about that, but if flex mode is turned on at the global level, then it does activate this type of prescription. Skips only those lessons in which they did well and assign only those lessons within that unit in which they did not reach passing threshold. Pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And so basically what it does is streamlines their learning path, by which may take a full year course like Algebra 1, which is 180 hours in length, and turn it maybe into maybe a 130-hour course because of how well they do on these per-unit assessments.
Right.
That's a value add, at least from as a former teacher. If I had this program back when I was teaching, it would be instrumental with my special needs students. All right. So in summary, at the time that we assign a course, if we activate course prescriptive mode, it develops this individualized learning path as illustrated on the right-hand side. Students demonstrate mastery through formative and summative assessments. Prior knowledge is rewarded because of their performance on that pre-unit assessment. It basically skips those lessons which they showed proficiency. Students omit mastered units. Thank goodness, that'd be nice. Why go over something they already have mastery of?
Right.
And then finally, students are assessed on all standards in summative assessments to demonstrate mastery. So even though they skipped, and this is something really important to note right now, and I'll reiterate this next week when I work with your probation officers. If in fact they skip lessons based on their pre-unit assessment, it also will take those questions from those related lessons out of the succeeding quiz. But it will not take the questions out of the summative unit test.
Okay.
Because the unit test is summative, it measures all of this content within that unit.
Okay.
Really important to remember.
So have you seen pros and cons with that? Have you had students who have basically tested out of that particular lesson, but when it came down to taking the exam or test, whatever, they had issues, or is it kind of the idea once you master it, you've got it?
Well, that's a great question, Scott. One thing we cannot control is students guessing.
Right.
And if they guess and happen to reach proficiency just by chance, it will show its full colors in that summative end of unit test.
So what would happen then if they do not pass that test? Do they start from the beginning, or they just retake the test, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's when we get into our system default settings and how many attempts you would want that student to have before you say, okay, there needs to be some intervention by your probation officers.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Course customization, we will not focus on too much. I'm going to bypass a couple slides here, but I just want to point out one thing, and this is quickly illustrate this. On the right-hand side, if in fact you are customizing a course, let's say for Algebra 1, as illustrated on the left-hand side, there are your units within Algebra 1, but on the right-hand side, if I'm in the process of customizing this course, I can now rearrange the units within that course in any order that I want to align to my curriculum or pacing guide. Love the feature, but again, that's not going to be our focus. Or if I look at this next illustration, tell me what's happening, Scott, if in fact on the left-hand side I want to create a custom course that includes content from CTE course called Construction Careers. What's happening on the left-hand side, and what is that teacher doing on the right-hand side at the time that she's customizing the Algebra 1 course?
Can I phone a friend?
Well, we do have 5 consultants on our webinar observing today's. You can call them and ask them for advice, but that's the first time anyone's asked me that, Scott. That's great.
You're welcome. You can use
Just
that.
try to keep them around.
You can use that in future trainings if you need to.
Oh my goodness, that's a classic. Anyway, what happens is that that teacher can pull in content from CTE into their Algebra 1 course and tell me what would the value add of that be to a student who thinks Algebra 1 is a pretty mundane, boring course. What does it add to that course structure?
Just how they would apply it in their future career, basically.
Exactly right. And working in special education for as long as I have, that's exactly what these students need. They need to understand how to take content and apply it to real life situations by which they will be exposed to. Great job. All right, let's go ahead and get right into the next slide, and then we'll go right into your live URL address for Odysseyware. This next illustration will indicate the different user types and levels in Odysseyware, of which you are already designated as the admin along with Diane. And I've already enrolled your names, so I'll give you your login credentials here shortly. The admin sees all and does all in the Odysseyware system. So no matter how many teachers, probation officers, or students that you enroll in the system, the admin can always track and monitor every student that's been enrolled in the system. They are also responsible for setting up the default settings and permission rights within Odysseyware. So at the global level, or I call it the circuit breaker level, you can now manage that, although at the individual client level, you can change permission rights and passing thresholds by any teacher that's been given that right to do so. But the admin is the most powerful. Super teacher, if in fact it was a single or multiple buildings, can see across buildings or across all classes within that building if designated to do so. But the super teacher can see beyond just a single class, like a guidance counselor would be a perfect example of a super teacher rights, where they can see every class within that building. Where a teacher, or in this case probation officer, can only see those students in which has been designated as the teacher record. They cannot see across other teacher students' records, only their own. And then if you want to utilize this feature of Odysseyware, you can set up parent profiles. Once you set up a parent profile with their email address, first name and last name, they are then invited to access Odysseyware once they create their own login credentials and monitor their child's records in Odysseyware. Any questions about these 4 user types and levels?
No.
No.
Okay. Again, the fifth one would be the students, obviously, and they would have only access to the courses in which they've been assigned by the probation officer. All right. And as you look at the different types of navigation bars, these blue navigation bars will denote those menu tabs by which an admin has and which a super teacher or teacher does not have. So if you look across left to right, all of the tabs look the same with the exception of admin. They have a school settings tab and a teacher admin tab, as well as a parents tab, where the teacher or super teacher does not have that privilege, which means when we start talking about default settings and permission rights, all that will be done under school settings, and only the admin can do that. And then if you look at super teacher and teacher, identical menu tabs as what the admin has. Student will only have access to his or her own courses in which the teacher record has assigned, in this case the probation officer. And then finally, the last one, which should say parents, is where they can access and view only in PDF format the courses as well as the reports that indicate the student's progress. But it's only in PDF format by which they can view. They can't manipulate anything in their own child's records. All right, I think we're ready to begin. This is the URL address to access Odysseyware. This is a standard URL for all user types, no matter if you're a student, parent, teacher, super teacher, or admin. They will be using miamicountjc.owschools.com. The username, which is the initial username that I'm going to be using when we set up the system for you, is going to be main admin, all lowercase. Password is the date of purchase, OW Odysseyware, 051917. So May 19th, 2017. You do have, or you did purchase 6 concurrent licenses, which means you can enroll 1,000 students or above in Odysseyware, but only 6 students at one time can be logged into Odysseyware. When they log out, that frees up another license for another student to use. So we'll talk about how to manage these 6 concurrent licenses throughout the year. Your username will be the following. Scott, it'll be your first initial, last name, all lowercase, no space. So S. Oxier.
Yep.
Password will be 123456. And when you log in, you'll change it upon your first login to whatever you want. A minimum of 6 characters, though. Elizabeth, same thing. E. Yingst, Y-I-N-G-S-T. 123456 is your password. All right. So when you go ahead and log in, if you wish to do that and follow me as I go through this demonstration, that would be greatly appreciated. This will be the login screen that you will see when you type in that URL address. And then I'll exit from my PowerPoint and let's go ahead and log in. And I'll go live under your account as well. Give me a second here. And Scott, if you can verify that you see my screen, which is the login screen.
I do.
Alrighty. Again, any questions that you have at any time, please stop me. Or call a friend.
Oh.
Okay. All right, let me increase the size of the screen so you can clearly see the menu tabs on your blue navigation bar. And Elizabeth and Scott, are you logged in as well, or are you just going to watch from my screen?
Right now we're just watching from your screen.
Okay, because either way is fine.
Okay.
All right. When you log into Odysseyware as an admin, please note your blue navigation bar. And the 2 tabs by which a super teacher and teacher does not have will be the school settings and teacher admin. Otherwise, the other menu tabs are the same.
Okay.
When we first log in, it will always go to your home page as indicated and highlighted on the left-hand side of your navigation bar. Let's talk about the home page just for a second. The home page will contain 3 windows. On the left-hand side is the ability to send messages to any colleague or send messages to any individual client, that being your students. On the right-hand side will be a very important box for any probation officer or admin to look at on a daily basis. This is where the probation officers will receive notifications, and we'll talk about what notifications are in a little bit when we talk about school settings. But actions box is a very important box in which teachers receive notifications. And then if I scroll further down, this will give you the assignment alerts box or window. This will give you the most recent work that your students or clients are currently working on or have worked on without getting into generating reports or tracking their progress through the grade book. This will just reveal the student's name, the course they worked on, the units, the title or assignments within that unit, the dates, and what their current activity is within the program based on this legend directly above. Again, don't worry too much about that right now. We'll explain that in more detail next Thursday. So, assignment alerts also, by the way, beyond just at the bottom of their home page, can be clicked on right here to the right of the home tab called assignment alerts. It gives you the same information. So 2 different places where you can see assignment alerts. But right now I want to talk about school settings. School settings is what the purpose of today's admin training webinar, to talk about default settings and permission rights. So we set the stage for next Thursday's on-site PD session. In school settings, you will see 7 tabs at the top of the window, from message display all the way over to the point where you see terms and calendar. Let's start with the first tab called message and display. The name of your account is Miami County Juvenile Court. This will appear in the upper right-hand corner of every user type's screen. Do we want to keep it the same, Elizabeth, or change it for whatever reason?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Time zone is relative to reports. Since we're on Eastern time zone, we'll make sure we retain that time zone as listed. So Eastern time zone. Welcome message is a welcome message, as it indicates to the right, that appears on the user's home page. You can type a message that contains no more than 255 characters. And again, once we save this page, it will appear in boldface when a student logs in or when a super teacher or teacher logs in. They'll see the message at the top of their screen. And so if you want to put like welcome to Odysseyware or good luck with your work, whatever message that you would like to put in there, Elizabeth or Scott, as an admin, you can do that.
Okay.
Message of the day could be quotes of the day, could be just positive reinforcement, anything that keeps them engaged, and focus on the task at hand. Yet again, if you save this message, it will appear not in boldface, but it'll appear right below the welcome message at the top of their screen. And then finally, the standard documents by which have been uploaded into your system, which are alignments of our coursework to your Ohio State standards, they have been uploaded. And they can be accessed at any time, by which at the time that you do customize courses, you can customize by pulling in standard aligned lessons that align directly with that standard objective. You also have the next generation science standards also on here if in fact you want to tap those as well. That's it. So if I make any changes to this particular page, I simply choose save, and it saves that page and also executes on that request to send out a welcome message or message of the day. Any questions about this tab?
So how do the public schools utilize that page? Do you see teachers putting a message of the day each day, or do they kind of do the same one all the time, or how do you best utilize that?
First of all, a teacher or super teacher cannot create welcome messages or messages of the day. Only the admin can.
Right.
But the welcome message could be just as part of their orientation to Odysseyware. It could be as simply as welcome to Odysseyware.
Okay.
And message of the day or message of the month or week could be, keep up the good work. Reports are looking really good based on your progress. If you're thinking about sending an individual message, you would go back to your home page and send a new message from your home page. Or on the far right-hand, Scott, where it says on your blue navigation bar, messages.
Right, okay.
Okay, good question. Now the important tab, grading, pacing, and assessments. Here are those passing thresholds by which the student would have to score in order to go on to the next lesson, next quiz, next test. But the first one I want to talk about is the one listed at the top. It's called the CRX pass threshold. That's the course prescriptive mode designed specifically for credit recovery programs. This is the one that at the time that you assign a course and activate this permission will now require the students to complete a pre-unit assessment by which they would have to score 70% or above. And if they do, what happens, Scott, if they pass a pre-unit assessment? What will happen if they pass Unit 1 with a score of, let's say, 85%?
They skip all the lessons.
Excellent.
I like it.
It goes right to Unit 2. Excellent. If they fail it right now, and I'll show you another feature here in just a second, if they fail it, they'll be assigned all of the units within that course. What makes this unique for credit recovery is if I scroll down and activate flex mode right here, it will then give them the opportunity to create a prescriptive learning path based on that pre-unit assessment score. And if they did well, it will pass, go right to the Unit 2. But if they fail, while flex enable mode is turned on, it will only prescribe those lessons in which they did poorly on that pre-unit assessment and bypass those or skip those in which they did well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Again, we're at the global level, the circuit breaker level. So if you want that feature, we have to have it turned on at this level.
Okay.
Perfect. So going back to this threshold, recommendation. You'll see directly below there where your lesson passing thresholds are 70, 70 for quiz, 70 for test. It's typically advised that you increase the course prescriptive threshold above what your standard lesson passing threshold is. Why do you think if I change this to an 85%, why would that be in a client's best interest to be at that high of a level?
Because you know they would know it versus if you'd avoid the guessing part of it.
Exactly right. It's measuring more of their competency in a pre-unit assessment scenario. So you want to, the higher the better, but again, we don't want to frustrate these kids too much by putting them to the 90 percentile, but 80, 85 is typical. What would you like to have as your threshold for course prescriptive mode?
62.
I think 85 would be fine. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, whatever they recommend. I mean, they know more than we do about it. So, yeah, 80, yeah, that's fine.
Or 80? You want to go with 80 just to...
Yeah, 80 is fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
That was when we were in high school, so let's go with 80.
All right, sounds good. So 80%, that's a good number or percentage. Then as we work through the rest of these thresholds, what is the standard passing threshold for lessons? Right now it's set at 70. You can change it to whatever you wish.
I'm going to ask a dumb question, but like in school, isn't 60 passing?
You know, be surprising, Scott. It varies from one district to the next.
Okay.
Is 70 what typically the schools are using?
Yeah, between 60 and 70.
So you want to go 65? Cut it right in half?
I guess. I still like 62, but yeah, 65 is fine.
Hey, at the end of the day, it's your decision, guys. We'll just guide you through our recommendations, but whatever you feel comfortable with.
What do you recommend? 70, honestly?
As a special education teacher, even though my students were performing way below grade level, I raised the level of expectation, and the higher I raised their expectation around passing thresholds, the higher they performed, believe it or not. So yeah. I'd recommend 70, but once again, we don't want to frustrate these kids too much when they are trying on their third or fourth attempt that they still can't pass it.
So let me ask you this, and you might be getting to this late. I mean, what we're starting to learn about is, I think they're called the EOC test, that where these kids have to earn a certain amount. I think it's like 18 points to be able to graduate high school. So what we're finding out is a lot of the kids are getting through some of this programming. They're completing their classes, but then they're struggling with passing those tests. So I think what we want to try to avoid is it being we want them to pass the class, but it being too easy where they don't have the general knowledge, and so they're not passing those tests and ultimately not completing their high school requirements for graduation. Does that make sense? That
makes perfect sense, Scott, and that's a great point. In fact, that's an issue nowadays with online digital curriculum. In fact, it's not rigorous enough, or the program doesn't prepare students for these type of state assessments where they perform well. If in fact they're performing well within these prepackaged courses, then there's a problem.
Right.
And we want to bring fidelity of implementation around this implementation. And next week I will be talking about strategies of how to ensure a high level of performance based on certain program protocols and procedures that will set the stage for your clients to do well on first attempt.
Okay.
Because my concern, and I'm sure you can attest to this, guys, is the fact that when students get into these online curriculum, they start trying to work around and trying to guess their way through until they memorize the answers, or they're trying to beat the system. Odysseyware doesn't let you do that because of the permission rights and settings by which you determine to avoid that scenario.
Okay.
And that's what I like so much about this program, is doing our end of the bargain, by which as we as administrators and probation officers can set a system by which expects high level of performance, by which not only ensures a high level of performance on their unit test, but their end of course exam, which hopefully translates to a high level and growth on their state assessments.
Okay.
Okay. The next item down, so we'll keep it at 70%, or do you want to change it back to 65?
70 is fine.
Okay. And again, you can change it anytime you wish. The number of attempts would be the number of attempts we're giving that client in order to pass this lesson. We know 10 is way too high. Typically 3 to 4, nothing more than 4.
What happens if they can't pass it? What do they go back through, or do they go to more remedial course, or they just fail it?
When they fail a lesson, they'll go back to the second attempt and they'll see which ones they got right or wrong, but it does not indicate the answer. But it will have a little map at the top where it indicates with a green check mark that they got the question correctly. Red X would be indicating that it was not correct, and then a slash line would be like they got partial credit based on a multiple select type question. So you set these attempts based on when is the point of intervention. So what is the maximum number of attempts before that officer needs to intervene and work directly with that student on that lesson?
3.
3?
Detention uses.
Oh, it is? Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Unless you know.
No, I do not know. Yeah, 3 is good.
Okay. And remember, any of these global settings can be changed at the individual client level by you or by the teacher if given the permission to do so.
Okay.
Okay. And then block progress. I mentioned back when we were at the home page that actions box that indicates those notifications by which the officer will receive. If in fact we put a check mark here, that would indicate to the officer that that student did not pass on the 3rd attempt and needs that officer's permission to unlock that lesson so that student can go back into a 4th attempt to try to pass this lesson at 70% or above. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But the problem here, and this is something to consider, if in fact a officer is not readily available to unlock that test, that student cannot go on to the 4th attempt until that officer unlocks it back at the home page. So we find in credit recovery where block progress is probably a disadvantage because we want them to freely go through the units without waiting for a officer or teacher to unlock a given lesson, quiz, or test. What is your preference? Blocked on or blocked off? Either way is fine with me.
We're always going to have somebody there unless they're at home.
Right. So it would avoid that part. Like, we're not going to, the after hours piece, we're not going to.
Yeah, they would have to wait for.
I think it would be, I mean, to me, it'd be blocked because we would always be with them in our situation. Like, from a school standpoint, they're not always with them.
Right.
You know, but the kids talk about that a lot, like, oh, this such and such is blocked and I can't get into it.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
But from our standpoint, I don't know how much unsupervised time they would actually have.
Yeah, and
we're not running a school.
Right.
You know, so I would say I would vote blocked without knowing a whole lot about it.
Okay. And when we get into the discussion next week with the officers, if you want to change this, you can certainly change it any time.
Right.
All it does is just gives that notification automatically through the Odysseyware system back on that home page. They need to unlock this particular lesson because they exceeded the number of attempts for that particular client. All right, we'll keep that blocked for now, and if there's any further discussion, we'll change it if deemed necessary.
Okay.
Let's quickly go through the rest of this. Passing threshold, what would you like for quiz passing threshold?
I think 70 is fine. I think one thing we'll probably do is ask, like, David L. Brown what they use, or maybe some of our bigger school districts as well. But for now, 70 is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we can change them later if we need.
Yeah.
We don't know, like, what's the norm for the kids that we work with now. We don't know what their standards are, honestly.
Because most of our kids will already be having done some Odysseyware, and they maybe got kicked out, and then we put them in the system, and they'll maybe taking off from where they left off or something. So we want to make it pretty consistent to their home school.
Yeah. One thing about that, if in fact they're working Odysseyware outside of your URL, it does not transfer the data into your URL. So if you had login credentials to access what they're doing in Odysseyware from a representing school district, you can certainly do that and see how well they're progressing. But what you assign in Odysseyware under your URL will be those courses in which they work independent of those other districts. Does that make sense?
Right. So if a kid is 55% complete with World History 1, and then they would come into, quote unquote, our program, if that's, let's say they're at Piqua High School and they're 55% completed and they come into our program, that would not transfer over to our program, correct?
That's correct. This is working out of two separate URLs. That's correct.
Right. I think we've had that conversation with our public schools and, like, our day treatment program. Like, kids have stayed in day treatment till they completed their program, unless they got special permission from that home school, that public school.
That's
it hasn't transferred over. That's why kids have stayed the extra 2 weeks to get that whatever credit in science, and then they go back to Piqua or Troy or whatever. Right? Okay.
All right. And number of attempts for quizzes?
What's normal?
2 to 3, no more than 3.
I think 2's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Block progress?
Same, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then test passing thresholds. Again, every unit consists of lessons, quizzes, tests, and projects, although projects is not a threshold under this particular menu. 70?
I think 70 is fine, yeah.
And number of attempts?
Is it back to 2? Or what's normal again?
1 to 2.
What's the rationale between them getting more attempts on lessons versus quizzes and tests? Like what the norm? If the norm is 3 for lessons, but then the norm for tests is 2, why is that?
It's because you're setting a level of expectation around performance. We're giving them some leadway in lessons by giving them 3, but by the time they pass each lesson within a given unit, they should do well on quizzes. Therefore, you usually have less attempts on quizzes as well as even fewer attempts on tests, but right now we'll keep it at 2.
So basically, if we set the number higher on tests, then we're making it more likely that they will be able to kind of guess their way through it without having a true understanding of what they're supposed to know.
Without question. And what will that affect at the end of the course?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm telling you, every student who's been on online digital curriculum are going to find a way to have a workaround. And, you know, one thing you have to be mindful, guys, of is that if students have access to Google or anything by which they can quickly bring up a calculator or something that provides the answer outside of Odysseyware, we can't control that unless you have some filters or whitelists that by which you can prevent that.
Right. Yeah, we've seen that a lot in just our brief period of time. We're trying to monitor kids on Odyssey that you go into the room, you check over their shoulder, Google is a quick tap away. So, yeah.
And that's why you want to put somewhat restrictions around block progress. And as we've discussed, now the next part of this, and by the way, do you want block progress on per test?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Again, we can weigh the pros and cons next Thursday and change it if deemed necessary. All right, we've already talked about Flex. That gives you the ability to get that individualized prescriptive learning path based on assessment performance. That's already checked off, which is good news. Monitor assessments, where block progress will block something on the back end if a student exceeds his or her own maximum number of attempts. If, in fact, I put, let's say, a check mark here under test, that means the only place that that student can take a unit test, pre-unit assessment, end of course exam will be within a proctored environment. They cannot take it at home because what is required here is that officer would have to unlock these assessments for any student to take it at that time.
Right.
I don't think it's as necessary for quizzes. I don't want to be too restricted, guys, on their accessibility. Plus, I don't want to inundate the teacher with too many notifications back on their home page.
Okay.
So what you're feeling about least blocking on the front end the test so students cannot take it at home or any other location.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. Again, let's weigh the pros and cons next week. And then finally, under this particular tab, the different weights. Preset, 25% of the weight will be lessons, 25 projects, 25 quizzes, 25 tests. It really varies district by district how they put more weight on. Most of them put more weight on test and quizzes than they do lessons. In credit recovery, you'll find out the projects will not be as important as the content coming from the lessons. So you'll see where project weight could be down all the way down to maybe 5–10%.
Right.
But when we go through training next week, I want to revisit this with both of you along with Diane to see how you want to change these weights based on what we preview next week.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We now save these global settings. It has been saved. And every...
Wait.
Oh.
I want to go back to 8%. I'm joking.
It's Friday afternoon. It's Friday afternoon, Scott. You're testing my patience now. No, there's anything you want to review from this, feel free to bring this up. Otherwise, we can revisit next week.
Sounds good.
All right, great job, guys. Great job. Okay, next tab at the top under school settings is permissions. These are yet again global permissions. So let's go through these fairly quickly. They're pretty self-explanatory. Allowing students to send messages, not to each other as clients, but to an officer in reply or sending a message to an officer. So do we want messaging in your type of environment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think our teacher over day treatment has really utilized that feature. So yes.
All right, very good. Student note-taking. I'm a high advocate of note-taking for students that typically otherwise have a difficult time comprehending reading passages. Taking notes while they're in lessons is something I highly recommend.
Yes.
Yes.
Online notebook, very nice. Blank essay notification. At the time that a client completes an essay or short answer response, if they submit it without typing a single character, the teacher would be notified back at their home page under the actions box if in fact this is checked off. Do you want them to be notified when a client submits a blank essay or short answer response?
I don't know is my best answer.
Yeah, what's typically done? I mean, do we get that a lot?
We do, because students don't like to write generally in online digital environments, although I think it's critical that they do because of the emphasis of writing across the curriculum. Teachers would love to be notified, and therefore we typically have this checked off.
Okay.
Okay. Teacher permissions. The ability to change your own password. Absolutely. Here's the important one right here. The ability to override those global settings by which we just discussed. In other words, passing thresholds, number of attempts, block progress for any individual client. Do you want the officer to have that privilege?
No.
Or do you want to determine that?
No, the admin will determine that.
Perfect.
I have a question about that as well, because we are probation officers and not teachers, and we do partner with our day treatment, and I know we can have 3 admin. Can I have the day treatment teacher placed on as an admin, because really they're the ones we're going to be working most with as far as messaging and grading this stuff?
Yep, absolutely. They can be an admin or a super teacher, whatever rights you determine.
I think we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And that person, it frequently changes. Is that a problem?
Not at all.
Well,
Because you can change at a point of course enrollment, you can change the teacher record in that enrollment anytime you wish.
Okay.
All right. And for that officer or day treatment teacher, they can go in there to any unit lesson and skip questions they deem too difficult.
Crickets.
So that's allowing the teacher or probation officer to put.
Yep. To remove.
No.
Okay. Yeah, because that gives them a chance to manipulate the number of questions in a given lesson, quiz, or test simply by giving them the permission to skip questions in that assessment. Okay. The ability to create classes or manage groups. They can create their own classes by which if they assign something, they can create by group or class rather than individual assignments.
There's no individual POs.
No.
No.
Okay. All right, then finally, student permissions. Student review test quiz, as indicated on the right-hand side, allows students to see a graded test or quiz, but if you actually activate this permission, they can also see the answers, which we don't want.
So no.
Yeah.
That's a subtle hint.
We appreciate the softballs.
And I'll be subtle here too by bypassing this next permission. We do not want this. But we do want enable grading view, because at the time that they do not reach a passing threshold, as indicated in the description to the right, it will indicate which ones they got right or wrong without giving the answer. That's good.
Right.
Especially if they're on their second or third attempt in a given lesson by which they're trying to pass in a timely manner. Random questions, absolutely, because anytime they go in the second and third attempt in a lesson, you want the questions randomized.
Right.
Now, the thing, little side note, it does not pull from a bank of questions outside of Odysseyware. It's the same 16 or 12 or 10 questions, just basically randomized.
Sure.
Okay. Hence the reason why I want to minimize the number of attempts, because if our number of attempts for lessons was at 5, after the 5th attempt, they probably could figure out what the answer is.
Right.
It goes back to your one question, Scott. You asked, what would the justification be to lower the number of attempts?
Okay.
Okay. We don't want them to change their own passwords. And then this one is kind of important. At the time, we'll talk about this in just a second, we set up terms, like a summer school term, a first semester term, a year-long term, whatever the term is, that when you assign a course to any given student, there'll be a start date and end date that reflects that term.
Great.
In the event, when a student goes through every single lesson quiz, there'll be a due date to the left of that lesson quiz, project, and test. And if, in fact, they're 1 day late, it will notify the student on their screen with a yellow triangle that they're late. That doesn't mean they can't go on. It's just a notification to keep them on track.
Right.
Do you want that on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Very good. And finally, in essays and short answer response, the ability to have the spelling and grammar check on, absolutely. And then for the probation officer or day treatment teacher, the scoring rubric that allows you to enter the grade manually for those essays by which are required to grade. Okay. All right, good job. Let's save it. And that's the heavy lift of our training today. The rest of the menus we'll talk about next Thursday, but let me cover a few more things under school settings before we wrap up over the next 15, 20 minutes. Campus IDs. We talked about this earlier. Whatever physical building in which the students will be working in Odysseyware outside of their work at home, which we don't have to identify, what campuses can we now note simply by going to the right-hand side and choose Add Campus ID? Give me one of your campuses.
Day treatment.
Day treatment. All right. Is that a center or just day treatment?
Day treatment.
Day treatment.
Yep.
Okay, great. That's all.
We just named it. No.
All right, so that's been in there. Any other campuses?
Piqua office.
Piqua office. And save. Any others?
Troy office.
Troy office. Okay. Anything else?
And then do we want to add a home then?
No, that's not necessary. Unless that student is only restricted to home and not accessing these three buildings.
We have had that before.
Okay, let's go and put home.
Okay.
All right, very good. Your
And then
default,
can we add one more after that?
oh, go ahead.
Can we add Lincoln Center?
Absolutely.
Great.
And then which one would you consider as your default campus of the 5?
Piqua office.
Okay. Really doesn't matter, but I just want to identify one as. Okay, good. Okay, in any of these campuses that need to be changed, on the right-hand side, you would simply choose Edit and change the name of the campus ID, or if you want to delete it altogether, there's your delete option. Okay, check that off our list. Great job. Next icon at the top under School Settings is Archive. Here it says the grace period. I'm going to change this right away to 300 days because that's the maximum number of days by which if you archive at the end of the year an outdated course, a officer that has resigned or left the program, or day treatment teacher, or a student that has graduated. Anytime you archive something, you can always bring it back to an active status within the 300-day period. And that's the maximum number of days in the system. So that's what we'll set it at for now. Okay. And when we archive, by the way, it's data that's still stored and we can bring up any time within 300 days. But if it's outside 300 days, our company still can produce that data and get it to you down the road. All right, terms. This is very important. How are you going to set up your terms? Are they determined by a school year, by quarters, semesters, tri-semesters? Describe those, Elizabeth, for me.
Geez, I don't know how we'd want to set them up because I think every kid's different, but a school year?
It's credit recovery, isn't that the easiest way? Because they don't typically, it's based upon finishing a course versus what you did in a 9-week span. Or are we wrong on that?
Well, there's two different types of course length. Full year courses like Algebra 1, English 1, and a whole other type of large courses that are 180 hours in length. And then your electives are 90 hours in length, like your CTE courses and some of your other elective courses. So how much time do typically students are enrolled in your programs throughout the year? The entire year or partial, like semester enrollments?
Semesters.
Yeah, I would say semesters. It's different, but I think in dealing with the kids that we've seen log on to Odysseyware, they're on a semester schedule.
Okay.
And English 1 and English 2.
So if we do a 2017, 2018, not school year, but semester 1, would that be a good term?
I think so, yeah. Yep.
Okay. And we can change this, guys. We're just kind of throwing out suggestions. And then beginning with what date?
I mean, we're going to start it in the summer, so.
And it could be any date except for anything date that precedes today's date.
Yeah, July 1's fine.
Okay. And then end date would be probably in that, what, December time frame?
Yeah.
Go with the 31st.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Again, we can change that. So we want to make sure that term is enrollable. That's very important. And then we simply choose add term.
So what does this mean exactly? Like when we set it as a semester, that the kid, that's my question. What does that mean exactly?
What that means is that the time that we assign a course, it is required that you add a term to that course enrollment. If in fact it's semester 1, it will put a due date next to the very first lesson beginning with July 1st and put due dates for every lesson, project, quiz, and test within that course structure. So we'll actually spread it between the 1st of July through the 31st of December.
So if John Smith is enrolled in World Studies, they have to finish, John then has to finish World Studies during that time frame?
They don't have to. They can go beyond the end date in that term time frame. It's just keeping them on target to finish a course within that time frame, given whether or not it's a full year course or semester course.
So it's a guideline?
Yeah, that's all it serves as.
Okay, all right.
Plus, we can actually pull out data, all the data from your first semester term versus second semester term.
Oh, and this is why the kids say they're on Odysseyware and they can go till June 30th or
30th,
whatever,
right.
because that's what they have their semesters. So we're probably pretty close.
Okay, yeah. No, all right, that makes sense.
Okay. So second semester would be like January 1st through the June 30th.
Yep.
Okay, make it a full cycle, year cycle. Okay, again, anything can be changed anytime. We'll make that enrollable and add term. That's how easy that is. If you wish to change these or change it to a smaller or larger time frame, you can certainly do that at any time.
So when, like Liz was saying, our kids say June 30th, they said the school said it like that because that teacher, that administrator is probably off the month of July. Typically. Is that what that means?
Probably, and they have to have all their work done by then.
Right.
That's the end of the semester.
Okay, all right.
That's correct, but they can't exceed these end dates. They're not restricted to stay within this time frame at all.
Right. Okay.
All right, very good. And just please note that under this one column, working days, that's a number of working days, but if I want to manipulate this number right here, I go to calendar. And here under the calendar, you would simply choose all of the holidays by which you want to now not consider as a working day. For example, if I go to September, the first Monday of September, which is Labor Day, if I just simply click on the 4th of September, watch what happens. It puts no school. And if I went back to my first semester term, it would now be down from 130 working days to 129. That's all it does.
So, and you can pick whatever random day you want?
You can do that. I mean, they can still work on those no school days. It just indicates by term how many working days between the start and end date.
I see.
That's all. You don't have to do that, though.
Put my birthday on
it. Just a reminder to everyone, huh?
Right, there'll be a national holiday someday, but why wait, really?
The kids will like it. Oh, yeah, school today.
Well, now that you mention it, you have an audience on the webinar. Scott, when is your birthday?
December the 10th.
Duly noted.
There's several shopping days left. My Bengals will be 12-3 by that point.
Yeah, yeah. I've been a Bengal fan for a long time, and my wishes have not come true. I've been in mourning for about, 35 years now? I'm not sure how many years, but it's been a long time.
Started about that same time for me.
All right, and then finally, the last couple things we'll cover before we end. That's it for school settings. As I look left to right across these tabs at the top of this window, do you have any questions about these tabs?
No.
Great job, everyone. Great job. The last thing is teacher admin. Again, that's a unique menu tab that a super teacher and teacher does not have. Only the admin has, as we explained earlier. Here you have the list of all currently enrolled admins that I did prior to today's training webinar. That includes Diane as well. Anytime you want to add and enroll an officer, which I will do, Elizabeth, once you send me that list, I'll have them enrolled prior to next Thursday.
Great.
And it will contain, if I did go under Create Teacher to show you how easy this is, once I choose Create Teacher on the right-hand side, it takes me into their profile. Here I can type in, let's say, Judy Smith, maybe a probation officer. And I just type in first name, last name. Username is any way you want to design it, but if it is first initial, last name, you just type it in as such. Password is going to be 123456, and they'll change it upon login as you will change it when you log into Odysseyware for the very first time. But down here, we're going to make sure that their rights are either super teacher or teacher. Again, what's the difference, Elizabeth? What's the difference between super teacher and teacher?
The super teacher can make and monitor all of the kids in that classroom, where the teacher is just monitoring the youth that it's teaching or enrolled.
Exactly right. Excellent job. So if a typical officer, would you consider them super teachers or regular teachers?
Well, and I guess that's my question that we need to talk out, because they would obviously be the teacher. They're the probation officer. They're enrolling them. However, we are going to probably all be monitoring the classroom. So actually, I think I'm going to have all my POs be super teachers.
Could not agree more. It's always on the safe side to give super teacher rights, unless it truly is a self-contained classroom where a teacher only should have access to that class.
Okay.
Good. So we would give them that right. I'll go ahead and sign them all super teacher rights once I receive that list from you. There is the campus ID. The default is Piqua office, but you would actually choose which campus based on their location or multiple locations.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll keep it at Piqua for now. And then finally, these rights below here were based on the permissions by which we discussed earlier. So there are things by which they will not be given access, like overriding those global thresholds. Right now, customizing courses is not a possibility. Do we want them, this is a very important question, do we want the super teachers or officers to assign the courses, or would that be the admin's responsibility?
I'm really thinking that that's going to come from the teacher. I'm concerned with POs assigning it and something coming back and them saying, not giving credit.
And he's pretty accessible.
He is, yeah.
So, yeah, I would say just
Let's leave it the way it is.
Okay, we'll have more discussions around this next week. Okay, very good. And then once I did save it, it would add that super teacher to this list, but I chose cancel, so it is not a part of our roster as shown on the screen. On the left-hand side, one thing to note also, if you're monitoring activity among your officers and day treatment teachers, see the blue? That indicates that person's currently logged in, which is me. But if you were logged in working along with me, you would have a blue figure, but since you're logged out, a gray figure. Okay. And that's basically it. You can filter by campus ID, you can filter by first name, last name, once all the names are logged in. And again, this is all under the Teacher Admin tab on your blue navigation bar. In regards to students, since we're talking about such a small population, I'm going to actually have you enroll students between now and Thursday. This is very simple to do, just like teachers was. What we do is go over to the right-hand side. There's no need to import a handful of students. Therefore, to create your clients, you'll choose Create Student right here. Just like the teacher profile, you would type in that client's first name, last name, user ID, however you want to do it, but make sure your naming conventions are consistent. Password, first time password, second time, repeat the same password, and then make sure that that student, or excuse me, client, is assigned to the appropriate physical building. If they're in multiple buildings, you can choose multiple buildings, including home, right down here. And that's it. Do not change anything below this, because below this are all of the default settings by which we discussed and agreed upon earlier. There they all are.
How many students do you want us to put in?
How many students do you think are using the program? Because you can put as many as you want to with the concurrent licenses.
6 then. Okay. And this is just for test purposes?
No, these were actual students, or have they not been enrolled yet in your program?
We have 4 currently day treatment.
But we can't take them from day treatment, or none of their work will transfer. So it'll have to be new students, so we'll have to see how many we get coming into the program between now and then.
Okay.
Because I don't want the students that we currently have in our day treatment to lose where they're at. So, and I don't know, do we have anybody coming in?
No.
Okay.
We can talk about it, would you? We have to, between now and Thursday?
Really, you don't have to. We can do it the day of if you wish. But if you want to practice reinforcing how to enroll a new student or client, you can do it through that means.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. We'll bypass parents for now. Course enrollment, we'll talk about that next week. Gradebook will probably be the most popular of all the menu tabs on the blue navigation bar, because this is where we track and monitor student progress without doing a report. But courses is where you access the entire course library. Here it is. When I click on courses and scroll down to the very bottom, right away in the bottom right-hand corner of this window, it will indicate that you have 245 prepackaged courses in your library, of which are all alphabetically listed on the left-hand side, starting with advanced placement courses. But if I want to filter using my course guide that I showed earlier to, let's say, all the math courses, all I do is just type in the word math, and right away it filters and brings up all of the math courses within your library, which if I scroll down consist of 26 titles. Do note, I didn't explain this earlier, but see where it says Math 300? That was on your course guide. 300 refers to 3rd grade level course or content, course content. 400 is 4th grade, 500 6th grade, 600 all the way up to 800, including end of course tests that you can use as a pre-assessment on the front end even before they begin the course to see how much they do or don't know. So all of those courses are listed by subject or by actual course title. If I want to type in Algebra 1 at the top, it goes directly to Algebra 1 under the course heading. So you can type in actual course titles right there under this one column. And then finally, if I did want to go to Algebra 1, for example, let me type in math again, and there's Algebra 1 right here, the second course listed down. If I go left to right, this will indicate under information column that all of these prepackaged courses have been published. They're all in read-only format, which means you can't change the structure of the course unless you customize. That does have flex capabilities, which initiates that pre-unit assessment by which provides that prescriptive learning path by which students will skip those lessons in which they showed proficiency and only assign those lessons in which they did not. So it does have flex capability. All the courses have been preset as enrollable. And then finally, on the right-hand side, the eyeball. At the time that you want to preview any given course as a teacher, super teacher, or admin, you click on the eyeball. So if I click on the eyeball for Algebra 1, it will now list all of the units within the structure of this course. Scott, what else do you see besides units listed here in this course structure?
The test.
Yep. The first semester test right here, and then you have your second semester test right here, and final exam.
Right.
Whenever you see a course structure like this, you know this is a full year course because it contains a first and second semester exam.
Okay.
Anything else would be considered a 90-hour course that only has an end of semester exam for that particular elective. If I open up the first unit called Foundations of Algebra, Elizabeth, tell me, what components do you see within a given course that's consistent in all of our courses? You see what?
Course overview.
Uh-huh.
I see it's got quizzes.
Yep.
One has 3, a review, and a test.
Good. Including a project, and also you have, these are called lessons, like variables and expressions. These are all lessons. So every unit in a course structure contains lessons, projects, quizzes, and tests, all prepackaged, all designed in order by which we'll teach in a rigorous, relevant manner the content relative to that particular unit. You'll really like the content, the course content. It's very engaging, and the amount of instructional tools they have instructional videos, gaming, arcade games, just really very engaging. I think you'll be very impressed with this when we look at next week.
Great.
And I think that's it. That's all found under the courses menu listed on the blue navigation bar, in which you can access and preview any of the 245 courses listed in your menu. I will explain these icons next Thursday. No need to go through these now, but we'll talk about these other icons listed under this particular tab. Other than that, the last thing is that do you want to exit anytime you're in admin by choosing log out in the upper right-hand corner, as students should do when they finish Odysseyware, is log out properly. Never click on the red X in the upper right-hand corner because they may not retain the work in which they did during that instructional block. So logging out. Any questions about what we covered?
Not about what we covered, no.
No.
Has this been helpful?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate your level of engagement. Excellent questions that you asked. Let me just kind of wrap things up by going back to my PowerPoint and talk about next steps. I just got an Amber Alert behind that. You hear that noise. I'm sure if you heard that, but an Amber Alert just turned on my cell phone and my computer, and everything's ringing right now. So I'm sorry about that. So the next frame, we've already talked about thresholds and weights. We'll further discuss that next week, especially around the weights for your courses. Progress monitoring, we'll talk about reports in detail towards the latter part of our on-site PD so that teachers know how to monitor student progress beyond what they will do in the grade book. And then next steps, very simply, we will populate your system with the teachers that you send to me, Elizabeth.
Okay.
No need to put any new clients into your system until we get together unless you choose to do so.
Okay.
The Odysseyware on-site PD session will be from 8:30 to 3 o'clock. I did send the agenda to Diane this morning, who reviewed and approved the agenda, and I will send a copy of that to you today.
Thank you.
And it includes very specifically what are the session topics, the time frames, when we're breaking, everything that you need to know about the session and the makeup of the session. And then I will send you as a follow-up the copy of this PowerPoint deck as well as the documents I refer to during the training. And that's it. So, and the last thing is this will provide all the technical and program assistance regarding links as well as phone numbers you'll need to know. That will be contained in this deck that I'll send you. And then finally, if you have a chance, when you get this deck, have a chance to provide feedback on today's session, that would be greatly appreciated, because everything you can provide as constructive feedback to us will make our presentations that much more effective.
Awesome.
That's all I have. Let's go around the horn. Scott, any questions, comments about what you've seen today?
No, sir. Thank you very much. That's good.
Quite welcome. Elizabeth.
No, I appreciate you giving us this administrative training, and we look forward to getting it and getting it out to the kids. So yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you.
We look forward to the partnership, and again, appreciate your investment into Odysseyware. Many thanks.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Have a great weekend.
You too.